The Chinese Grand Prix ended up being a pretty tough weekend for the Ferrari team. Not only did they spend most of the weekend as the third fastest team on the grid, but team boss Laurent Vasseur is now having to deal with the changing dynamic between their two drivers. Could Ferrari's performance give us an insight into the struggles they might face later in the year? 5 podiums in 4 weekends is a pretty good start to the year for Ferrari. While still clearly being the second fastest team on the grid, they've managed to perform at a high level. The Lewis-Hamilton news the team announced prior to the year hasn't been affecting their results. They hoped to continue that good form in China, a track where Ferrari have won 4 times. Ferrari managed a couple of top 10 places on the grid after sprint qualifying despite the wet conditions. They turned that into 4th and 5th on the grid, with Ferrari having a great chance at another podium on Sunday. But they would have been concerned about the performance of McLaren over the weekend. In qualifying, they were able to reach 6th and 7th, with McLaren being the faster team throughout qualifying. With Ferrari looking to build their lead in second place in the constructors' standings, they needed a great race to get past both McLarens. With both Ferraris next to each other off the start line, there was always a chance that the pair could make contact. Team boss Laurent Vasseur was certainly hoping for a clean start to the race, considering this could have set Ferrari up to challenge for the podium places. What the first corner did instead was put the team on the back foot. In the chaos of turn 2, it became blatantly clear that Charles Leclerc was struggling to get his tyres to temperature. The Monegasque driver was struggling with understeer, and it caused both himself and his teammate to go off the track. This cost both Ferraris not 1 but 2 positions, with Nico Hülkenberg and George Russell both able to get past the Ferraris thanks to Leclerc's mistake. All of a sudden, Ferrari had to think about whether they could even get into the top 5, and a podium push was highly unlikely. Both cars were able to make up position early on, but the mistake from Leclerc cost Ferrari a chance at another podium. They were able to close the gap on the 2 leading Red Bulls as well as Lando Norris, but were still unable to collect another podium finish. Instead, the team had to settle for 4th and 5th. Following the race, Ferrari spoke to the media about their disappointment. Carlos Sainz spoke to the media and said, "It was a bit of a crazy race. What we did at the start cost both Charles and I 1 or 2 positions, and that cost us a lot in the race." The Spaniard also spoke about some of the difficulties that he faced, thanks to the strategy that the team settled on. Sainz added, "Then we tried to follow the Mercedes. We tried to overtake him, but he stopped, and then we stopped. We put the hard tyres on very early in the last stint. I had to go very long, but we still managed to hang on for 5th, which I think was the maximum we could do." Team boss Laurent Vasseur said the team made too many mistakes in trying to master a tricky Shanghai circuit, and it cost them. He also mentioned that the issues that Ferrari had in the race were down to starting too low on the grid, instead of blaming things on the lap 1 incident between his 2 drivers. While it seems like Vasseur has fixed some of the strategic and pit stop related problems that Ferrari had, the rest of 2024 looks like it could include his biggest challenge yet. Tension between the 2 Ferrari drivers only seems to be rising as a crash seems imminent. In the final laps of the sprint race, the pair were jostling for position. They had some wheel-to-wheel racing, as it was clear the team were holding nothing back. There was even a slight moment of contact between the 2 with the Monegasque coming out on top. Carlos made a comment over the radio that seemed to say that there was a little bit more going on than just an on-track battle. Sainz said that Charles is racing him harder than the others. Maybe Charles is thinking about the fact that he's being outperformed by Sainz at the moment. This could have been the motivation for the feisty racing we saw between the 2. This is an issue for Vasseur moving forward, as it could easily cost Ferrari more points this season. Considering how well the pair of them managed to recover after their first lap incident, it begs the question of what could have been for the Scuderia. It's always fun to see teammates battling it out. 2016 was one of the few exciting seasons in the early turbo hybrid era because it was about a team split in 2 thanks to teammates battling. But if the 2 Ferraris are going to go head to head, it could cost the team more points. Vasseur therefore has a big job on his hands. He decided to let the pair sort out their differences after the sprint race, but said to the media that he would discuss their antics in the race with the pair. The job that Vasseur has to do is certainly a sensitive one. It is clear that Carlos Sainz is focused on getting every point possible for himself this season, and doesn't care if it comes at the expense of his teammates. Ferrari showed little faith in him long term, so why should he have a team-first mindset? But what Vasseur can't do is try to favour either driver, despite the fact that Ferrari are clearly more focused on Leclerc's potential. Maybe a stronger approach is needed from the usually laid-back Vasseur. This is the sort of problem that could lead to some massive issues later in the season. All of a sudden, Frédéric Vasseur needs to become the best man manager in Formula 1 if he wants to stop any future quarrels between his two drivers. The issues for Ferrari go much further than their two drivers. They came into this weekend expecting to be the second fastest car on the grid, but it was a weekend where McLaren seemed to have the upper hand. Ferrari's pace in the sprint race made it seem like a podium was set in stone. When you take a look at the data, it's pretty obvious to see where Ferrari lost ground on McLaren during the race. It was when Ferrari made the change to the hard compound that the pace they had dropped off dramatically. Having been catching the McLaren, they were at times half a second lap slower than Lando Norris in the pursuit of third place. Ferrari had made a brave decision in their aerodynamic setup and it caused all sorts of issues. They went for a lower downforce setup to give themselves a better shot at some overtakes in the race. But this choice meant that both Ferraris struggled to keep the heat in their tyres, which led to not only their poor pace on the hard tyre, but also led to Leclerc understeering going into turn 2. It shows that there are limitations with the SF24 when it comes to the aerodynamic setup. Without being able to create sufficient force on the tyres, Ferrari are never going to get the grip that they're looking for. Being a mile off Red Bull is disappointing. However, this team will be more focused on holding off the challenges behind them. McLaren were the second fastest team on the grid in China, and this is something that Ferrari cannot afford to continue. While they remain closer to Red Bull in the standings than McLaren, the team cannot let mistakes get in the way of them finishing second. At the moment, Ferrari plan to bring some upgrades to Imola, which is 4 weeks after the Chinese Grand Prix. With Miami coming up next weekend, there have been some rumours that the team will look to bring those upgrades forward to stop any slide in performance. If the car can't keep Ferrari ahead of McLaren, then any sort of on-track fighting between the two teammates could cause massive issues for the Scuderia at the end of the season. So no matter where he looks, Fred Vasseur has a massive task on his hands over the next few races. But what do you think about the tense dynamic between the Ferrari drivers? Put your thoughts in the comments down below. While you're down there, hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.